Plug in, everybody. Hello, this is Gary Spivak. Welcome to a special edition of Offstage with DWP. I want to cut right into it because we are live. This is timing. This is urgent. This is a call to action. This is a call to all music fans, everybody in the industry watching. First off, thanks for joining us on Offstage with DWP. We're talking about two initiatives today, which is the Restart Act and the Save Our Stages Act. Before I introduced our distinguished guests, who are distinguished looking as well, I want to first spend a moment on Save Our Stages. DWP is a member of NIVA, which stands for the National Independent Venue Association. Hopefully I didn't screw that up. Couple things on Save Our Stages, guys. SOS, saveourstages.com. It is not a handout. It is it's a grant. What Save Our Stages is asking for, which was initiative co-chaired by Amy Klobuchar, Senator in Minnesota, and also I think it's Tom Cornyn out of Texas. What Senator Klobuchar is proposing is a $10 billion grant to venues, promoters, the whole ecosystem. And that's a key word. I'll touch base on ecosystem in a bit. Things to note, everybody. Call your representatives in Congress. Call them, bug them. This is a critical week. We are the economic drivers in every market, and I'm talking about live music and venues and promoters. We can't forget about the workers. We can't forget about the stores, the shops, the gas stations, the coffee houses, the hotels, the Uber drivers. It's without live music, we can't feed into that ecosystem, and a market can't thrive. Yesterday was a day of action. I know Frank will touch on that, but just as important, so is today, and so is tomorrow, and obviously Friday is. Again, go to saveourstages.com, call your local representative in Congress, and urge them to pass this important Save Our Stages grant. Again, it's not a handout; it is a grant. Couple quick things of note: 75% of artists' income comes from live shows. 90% of the venues could be gone if we don't act now. 600 recording artists have signed on, or more now, in support of Save Our Stages. There's over 2,400 venues, promoters, operators who are part of saveourstages.com. I will say, I just got this in, over 1.5 million people have already called into Congress. That's great, but that is not enough. We need to keep our venues open, okay? That is just so critical. And before I give the ball to Frank and Stormy, who've been so kind to join us on Offstage with DWP, I want to paraphrase a quote that just came in from Rock and Roll Hall of Fame icon and music leader David Byrne of, as you guys hopefully know, David Byrne of Talking Heads. He said, and I'll paraphrase, "There's a kind of ecosystem at work here, where the little clubs nurture the acts that will eventually play to the 800-seat capacity, then the 1,500-seat capacity, then into the 2,500 ballrooms and more. Each level feeds into the next. Musicians need each rung on this ladder to be in place in order to be able to reel the next one. When there are gaps in this chain, the musicians struggle to leap to the next level, one that might be just beyond their reach." And I'll close with this from David Byrne. "If this supply chain of talent and creativity collapses, then nothing new will filter up, and we'll be left with recycling the stuff already at the top over and over, and the stuff at the top will be older than me and me." And with me. That, I want to introduce Frank Riley and Stormy Shepard, who are really spearheading such an important cause, dubbed as NITO. Frank, Stormy, thanks for joining us on Offstage at DWP today.
Great. Thank you, Gary. We both represent an organization called NITO, which is the National Independent Talent Organization. We started off with a group of 14 independent agencies. It's an ad hoc group. There's a story behind it, but we don't need to get into that right now. We expanded to include other agencies, other independent agencies and independent managers. And we then became even more inclusive by looping in all the touring personnel, the people behind the scenes when on a production of a show, the tour publicists, the bus drivers, the roadies, the stagehands, all the folks that are really important to the production of live music in communities. That's to say nothing about the impact that these shows and these artists and these communities have on local communities and how things develop around it. Just one quick comment about the David Byrne quote is that everybody, including David Byrne, including the Talking Heads, including the Rolling Stones, including Led Zeppelin, including anybody who might be somebody that you value and appreciate and respect, started off in a club.
That's right.
That's where they started.
That's right.
And what is really clear now, and particularly clear in this time of trouble, is that if we leave the musical venue system to one or two large promoters, there will be no diversity, there will be no development, there will only be what makes people the most amount of money. And if you look around the world here and the landscape, was David Byrne really successful on his first recording? He wasn't. Was Wilco successful on their first recording? They weren't. Was Led Zeppelin successful on their first recording? Well, yeah, they were.
Bruce Springsteen, REM.
They all have to develop, and that's what the system of independent venues is. It's a system of development. It's a system of education. It's a system of artists learning their craft and becoming better at what they do. That's what the independent community is about. That's where things need to develop. And without having that avenue and that pathway forward, we'll lose our voices. We'll lose the diversity. We'll lose the opportunity to speak to different people in different ways. And we'll lose a really important element of creativity. Now that I've said all that, shut up, Riley. Give it to Stormy. She knows more than I do.
Not quite, but Gary.
Stormy, you're headlining today. Thank you.
No. Thanks for having us here and giving us a platform to talk, especially at this most critical time while Congress is in session and negotiating, kind of what our existence is going forward. And I know you and I talked a little bit a couple weeks ago about how these clubs, they are not just stepping stones for us. This is where we live. This is where we breathe. This is where many of the artists on our roster continue to foster the culture in these different communities. And it's in these clubs where the future of the live music scene will be created going forward. This is the future of our industry, and we really desperately need these clubs to be able to continue promoting shows. We need these independent promoters. We need these artists. We need these crew people. We need the managers and agents to still be around coming out of this to continue to help this industry thrive and survive. I think we have some, a unique opportunity here to maybe call on some of the larger name artists out there to speak up, get loud, and advocate for some of these artists right now in clubs that are struggling. They came from these, this is where they came from. This is where they, kind of earn their chops, so to speak. And I think this is a time for them to defend and fight for live music and the survival of these artists and clubs.
Awesome. In a place like Louisville, which is what I know, a lot of activities happen with your organization.
Yeah, we do a lot of work in Louisville. That's a very important market for us, obviously.
Yeah. There's a really vibrant venue there called Headliners. And it's not only, Stormy's right, it's not only development, but Headliners supports a thriving group of artists who tour around America, have something to say, and have developed an audience that allows them to be musicians as their life and their livelihood. And without we lose Headliners in Louisville, we lose one of the iconic venues that's so necessary to our overall touring and the support of the artists that we all represent, and the artists that the audience cares about, goes to shows, buys tickets, and spends the money in their community. So anyway,
Yeah, no.
Sorry, Gary.
If that's fine. If we can backtrack just for a second, again, we're off stage with DWP, special live edition. I know Stormy and Frank really well. DWP knows Stormy and Frank really well. But if you could really quickly talk about your resume to give the rock fans out there to see who actually we have on off stage. Stormy, you're everybody from Rancid to the Interrupters, and Frank, Robert Plant, but yet you also have acts like Mitski and Soccer Mommy that are critical. That Mitski, we have seen play cafes to clubs to, I saw her at the sold out Hollywood Palladium, and her next stop is the next one. So if you guys could, tell everybody who you are, and then I want to get into part B of that.
Storm, you go first.
So I started Leave Home Booking about 30 years ago. Well, it is 30 years ago as of September 1st. So this is how
That's
I'm
impossible.
celebrating
You're 5 years old.
Amazing.
This is how I'm celebrating this year. But we've represented artists, mostly who have come from independent labels, who have embraced that DIY ethos and really kind of paved their own paths. And and many of them have become very successful, and they, we represent a wide range of artists, that anywhere from the clubs all the way up into the amphitheaters and larger. I mean, we have the Interrupters going out on tour next summer with Green Day, which is huge for all of us. And we have Rancid and Dropkicks going out and doing, co-headline dates in amphitheaters. And so we're there, but we also have artists like, Sharp Shock and Charger, and some of these other artists who are in the clubs right now. And so we really, this is incredibly important to us, because these are the promoters and venues that we work in on a daily basis, and that our artists really need to be there to survive and to continue touring. And we also need to be able to have consecutive markets to tour and route our artists into, with clubs that still exist.
Okay, thank you.
That's an important note, with clubs that still exist.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm older than Stormy. I started 40 years ago. I started in New York. I started when such a thing as an independent agent didn't really exist. There were a couple of major agencies, and if you didn't fit within their world, you couldn't really tour. I didn't understand that. I didn't get it. Didn't make any sense to me. So I just started doing it myself. And,
Still doesn't for Frank, which is the beauty of Gravity.
So, I started in New York. I had a company called Venture Bookings. I'm really proud that I represented the Replacements and the Gun Club and the DBs and all sorts of interesting independent artists from the 80s and 90s. I went through a process. I worked for major agencies. I worked for big time, full service talent companies. But in 2001, I started High Road Touring. We have 3 offices in Austin and Brooklyn and Sausalito, California, which is basically San Francisco. We represent a wide variety of people, including Robert Plant, as you've noted, Gary, thank you. Interestingly enough, on Robert Plant's last tour, he played Bourbon and Beyond. So we had some cross paths there.
Yes, sir.
But Robert played across the country, probably did 15 or 16 dates, and played for no major promoters. He played for independent promoters in every market across the country, with one exception in Philadelphia, which we did a co-headline date with Nathaniel Rateliff at the Mann Center, and we did it with AEG. The other dates, all independent. There's a vibrant, active, independent community out there that supports artists in meaningful ways and deals with the highest level of production and audiences and promotion, the highest. On the other side of it, everybody starts at the beginning, like I said at the beginning. Yes, we do represent Mitski. When I first saw Mitski, she was standing at on a stage in the Knitting Factory in Brooklyn, in front of about 20 people. And the last time she played in New York City, she played in front of 6,000 people at Central Park not one night, but 2 nights.
Amazing.
Did 12,000 people. She went in 2 years from 20 to 30 people to 12,000 people. And every step of the way, some part of that integral process was the independent promoters across the country. They care about individual artists. They do the work that's necessary to raise profiles. They are not manufacturing and tossing out the same thing over and over again. There's a deep investment in communities from these independent promoters. There's a deep investment in the artists that support those things. And that's part of the reason why these things are so necessary. So NITO is supporting, along with NIVA, the Restart program and Save Our Stages. It's our understanding that while these specific bills may not pass as individual bills, that pieces of these bills will be included in a larger overall bill of support and what's the right word? I don't know, but on the next package of coronavirus relief.
Frank, to interrupt you, sorry.
Go ahead.
Can you touch on the Restart Act, which is an act that is, I guess, supported, promoted by Senator Michael Bennett of Colorado? So if you could touch base, we touch base on Save Our Stages Act, but if you could, if you could go into more of the Restart Act.
What Restart means to us, PPP was a loan grant program to distressed business, shuttered businesses is what our lobbyist calls them. And it was helpful. I'm not going to deny that. But the problem with it was that it was allocated initially for 8 weeks and ended up supporting High Road for 6 weeks. So we had 2 weeks to reach into our pocket and keep things going. What Restart does is expands on that program, and it has fewer stipulations or requirements, and it's predicated on some part of lost income as opposed to the initial PPP program, which was done really quickly and unfortunately ran into some problems where they weren't able to discriminate who was valid on some level and who wasn't. What I really want to say about both of these programs is that Stormy, High Road, Gary, DWP, and the independent promoters are a vibrant and live community and perfectly capable of taking care of themselves outside of this enormous catastrophe that's happened to all of us. If a virus shows up tomorrow and everybody's inoculated, Stormy goes back in business. We don't need any subsidies. High Road goes back in business. We don't need subsidies either. The other issue is that there is a gap between when our work shows up and when the shows actually play, because you have to route these things and they have to fit within a schedule and they have to be promoted properly and an audience has to be able to find them. So not only do we have to get through this coronavirus period and pray for a vaccine, we need a bit of a runway to get restarted and to have these shows show back up. So what Restart really does is it offers us a period of time, it's 6 months, that would allow us to get through the end of the year, reassess things, and hopefully at that point there's a virus on the horizon and we can get started to work again. But that's what Restart is primarily. Okay. That's the main thing.
Okay, so we're off stage with DWP. I have Frank Riley of High Road and Stormy of Leave Home. And thank you for your time. Here's what I want to stress to every music fan listening, and that will hopefully share all this information with their friends and neighbors. The music industry has never asked the government for anything, ever. Banks have, airlines have, the car industry has, for bailouts. It is time, music fans, to call your local congressman and ask them to help the music industry, because it feeds the ecosystem. It's different levels of ecosystem. You want your local coffee shop next to Headliners in Louisville, Kentucky to survive? Headliners has to survive. You want your favorite band live again in 2021? Now's the time to act. So again, saveourstages.com. What sites, Stormy and Frank, can you give everybody watching off stage to go, or any phone numbers to act on?
Stormy?
Sure. Yeah, you can go to NITO, that's NITO live.org. And when you click on the resources tab, there is a take action button that they can push. Takes 30 seconds. Fill out that information and it will automatically direct you to your local and national representatives. It will automatically generate those notes for you. And at the end of that, it will give you the option to tweet at your local representatives. The information is already filled out for you. All you have to do is go to nitolive.org, click on the resources tab, go to the take action field and fill out your information. It will generate those letters. Super easy, doesn't take a lot of time. And that will definitely hit your local representatives. And if I might highlight a couple of states real quick, that these
Yes.
are our main targets. California, New York, Kentucky, Maryland, Louisiana, Florida, Maine, Illinois, Washington, and Arizona, South Carolina, and Missouri. Please, if you live in those states, be sure to go to that website and take action now to contact those local representatives and ask them to support Restart and Save Our Stages.
Awesome,
And-
guys. Yep.
Yeah.
Frank?
You can also modify the message that goes out to the senators if you choose to. And sometimes saying the word headliners or the borough or DWP or Bourbon and Beyond makes it a little bit more personal, a little bit more direct. And there's a way to easily type that in there on that note that's generated to your congresspeople. And I'd encourage you to make a little bit of a personal statement while you're doing that. But for expediency's sake, hit the button, send it out, get it done, make your vote. And by the way, in November, please make sure you vote. Do the right thing.
Yes, sir. I was always going to go there. Hashtag vote. Make sure you're registered. Headcount.org. Make sure you're registered. Hey, whatever you vote for, that's up to you. That's up when you close that curtain and you push your ballot. Just vote, participate, engage. As the late great Congressman John Lewis said, get into trouble. Get into good trouble.
Okay. Thank you.
Love you guys. Miss you dearly. Hopefully 2020, not hopefully, you'll be backstage at a DWP event, both of you guys, and we'll have big smiles on our faces when we have mass gatherings. But in the meantime, everybody listening, from an industry person listening to a musician to just a fan, please participate and act. Get in touch. Go on these websites. Call your congressman. Again, the music industry, we're tough cookies. We've never asked government for anything ever. Now's a good time.
Thank you. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you,
Thanks,
Frank.
Stormy.
Guys,
Thank
thanks
you.
for watching Offstage with DWP.